I knew something was wrong before I even turned into the gravel drive. Silver Pine Lake was supposed to be quiet this time of year. Late September. Cool air, still water, pine trees swaying gently like they were whispering secrets to the shoreline. My half-acre cabin lot had always been my escape, untouched, simple, peaceful. But that afternoon, as my truck rolled closer, I saw something that didn't belong. A beige RV, not just parked near the edge, not slightly over the property line. It was sitting dead center in the middle of my land like it had claimed the throne. String lights were strung between my trees. 2 folding chairs faced the lake. A small outdoor rug covered the grass. A generator hummed lazily in the background. For a moment, I genuinely wondered if I had pulled into the wrong lot. I hadn't. I knew every inch of that land. I bought it 7 years ago. Paid cash. Filed the deed myself. I had plans to build a small cabin one day. Nothing fancy, just a quiet place to breathe. I cut the engine and sat there staring. Then the RV door opened. Out stepped a woman in oversized sunglasses, blonde bob haircut perfectly styled, holding a clipboard like she was conducting an inspection. She glanced at me like I was an inconvenience. "Can I help you?" she asked. I stepped out slowly. "Yeah, you can start by explaining why there's an RV on my property." She tilted her head slightly, confused but not concerned. "This lot has been unused for months," she said. "The HOA granted temporary usage approval." I blinked. The HOA granted approval to park on my land. She flipped a page on her clipboard as if reviewing evidence. "Yes. Vacant lots negatively impact neighborhood aesthetics. We've been encouraging temporary occupancy to maintain community engagement." Encouraging temporary occupancy on private property. "I'm the owner," I said calmly. She lowered her sunglasses just enough to examine my face. "That's not what I was told." "I don't care what you were told. I own this land." Her lips pressed into a tight line. "Well, you should have informed the board that you intended to leave it undeveloped. Abandoned property creates liability." Abandoned. I felt heat rising in my chest, but I kept my voice level. "This is not abandoned. I pay taxes. I pay HOA dues. It's private land." She crossed her arms. "My name is Karen Whitmore. I'm on the HOA board." "Of course you are. I don't remember approving this," I said. "You don't need to. The board oversees land use standards." "No," I replied firmly. "You oversee community rules. You don't override property ownership." Her jaw tightened. "I've already invested in setting this up," she said, gesturing to the lights and chairs. "It would be highly inconvenient to relocate." Inconvenient. It was my land. "You have 24 hours, I said. "Move it." She actually laughed. "I will not be bullied." Bullied. I pulled out my phone and opened the scanned copy of my deed. I held it up. Her eyes flickered, but she didn't step back. "That proves ownership," she said carefully. "It does not negate HOA governance." "I'm giving you 1 day," I repeated. "After that, I take legal action." She turned her back on me. "We'll see." I didn't yell. I didn't argue further. Instead, I drove straight to the county records office the next morning. The clerk printed certified copies of my deed and property boundaries. Everything was crystal clear. No shared easement. No common use clause. No temporary occupation provision. Then I asked for something else. Can an HOA authorize use of private undeveloped land without written consent from the owner? The clerk raised an eyebrow. Not legally. That was all I needed to hear. From there, I called an attorney I'd used once during a contract dispute. I explained everything. He chuckled softly. "Let me guess. Board member." "Yes." "Let me guess again." She thought no one would challenge her. "Exactly." He advised me to issue formal notice in writing and document everything. If she refused to move, I had every right to have the vehicle removed as unauthorized trespass. That afternoon, I drafted a written notice. Unauthorized vehicle parked on private property. 48 hours to remove before towing enforcement. I taped it to the RV door and took photos. Karen came storming out within 20 minutes. "You cannot threaten board members." She snapped. "This isn't a threat," I said calmly. "It's notice. You are creating hostility in the community. You parked on my land." She ripped the notice down dramatically. I held up my phone. "Already documented." Her face changed for just a second. Then she called someone. By that evening, I received a voicemail from the HOA president. His tone was uneasy. We're reviewing the situation. Karen may have misinterpreted a casual discussion as authorization. We're looking into it." Misinterpreted. That was a polite word for overstepping. 48 hours passed. The RV didn't move. So I made the call. A heavy-duty towing company that specialized in large vehicle recovery. Yes, I confirmed. It's my land. Yes, it's unauthorized. Yes, I want it removed. They recommended scheduling early morning to avoid confrontation. I also contacted local police for a civil standby, just in case. Saturday, 7 a.m. The tow trucks arrived right on time. Two massive rigs rolled through the quiet neighborhood like steel giants. Neighbors started peeking through curtains. Then doors opened. Phones came out. Karen burst out of the RV in slippers and a robe. "What is this?" she screamed. The tow supervisor approached calmly. "Ma'am, is this your vehicle?" "Yes." "Do you own this property?" Silence. She looked at me. I handed the supervisor my deed. The police officer nodded. "Proceed." Chains clanked. Hydraulics hissed. Karen stepped in front of the truck. "This is theft." The officer gently but firmly guided her aside. "Ma'am, you've been served notice." The RV lifted slowly. And just like that, it was no longer on my land. But this wasn't over. Not even close. Because removing the RV was only the beginning. What happened next shook the entire HOA. And Karen had no idea how expensive her little power move was about to become. When the RV disappeared down the road behind those tow trucks, I thought the situation was over. I was wrong. By noon, my phone wouldn't stop vibrating. Neighbors I barely knew were texting. Some apologizing. Some asking what happened. A few quietly admitting, she's been overstepping for years. Apparently, Karen's temporary occupancy wasn't just about my lot. She had issued warning letters for patio furniture colors. Find a retired couple because their mailbox leaned 2 degrees off vertical. Threatened a family over a basketball hoop. But this was different. This was public. And it embarrassed her. That evening, an emergency HOA meeting was announced. Mandatory attendance for board members. Open floor for residents. I showed up. Not to argue. Just to listen. The clubhouse was packed. Karen sat stiffly at the front table, arms crossed, face red but composed. She was trying to look unbothered. The HOA president cleared his throat. "We are here to address concerns regarding unauthorized use of private property." Murmurs filled the room. One older man stood up. "Did the board approve her parking that RV?" Silence. The president hesitated. No formal vote occurred. A woman near the back raised her hand. "So she just decided." Karen leaned into the microphone. "I acted in the best interest of the community. The lot had been vacant for nearly a year. Wildlife had been observed. Unused land lowers property value. I stood up. I've paid dues every month. Taxes every year. That land is not community property." Applause. Not loud, but noticeable. Karen's jaw tightened. "This could have been resolved privately," she said sharply. "It could have," I agreed. "If you had asked." That line hit. Because she hadn't asked. She had assumed. And assumptions cost money. The towing invoice alone was over $4,800. Storage fees were accumulating daily. And here's where her situation became catastrophic. The tow company required payment in full before release. No payment. No RV. 3 days passed. Then 5. Then 7. The storage yard began charging premium daily rates. Meanwhile, the HOA's legal advisor sent a formal memo to the board warning of potential liability exposure. If I had chosen to sue for trespass or damages, the HOA could have faced serious financial consequences. That's when self-preservation kicked in. At the next board session, a vote was held. Removal of Karen Whitmore from the HOA board for abuse of authority. The vote passed. Unanimously. She didn't speak when it happened. She just stood up, gathered her clipboard, and walked out. But consequences don't stop at embarrassment. 2 weeks later, certified letters were delivered. One to me, a formal apology from the HOA, signed by every remaining board member. And one to Karen, a fine for unauthorized use of private land. Reimbursement required for legal consultations triggered by her actions. Mandatory compliance training if she ever wished to serve again. Which, from the looks of it, wasn't going to happen. Word spread fast. Silver Pine Lake had never seen drama like this. People who once avoided conflict started speaking up. Minor rule changes were reviewed. Transparency measures were added. Board decisions now required documented votes. And the temporary use loophole completely erased from the bylaws. As for Karen, her RV sat in storage for nearly 3 weeks. By the time she paid the fees, the total had climbed past $9,000. $9,000 for parking on land she didn't own. I didn't celebrate. I didn't mock her. I didn't even speak to her again. The loudest revenge isn't shouting. It's silence backed by law. A month later, I installed a modest wooden fence around my property line. Nothing aggressive, just clear boundaries. Neighbors stopped by occasionally when I visited. They'd nod. Some would quietly say, "Thanks for standing up." That surprised me. Because I hadn't done it for them. I did it because ownership matters. Because rules apply to everyone. Because power without limits becomes entitlement. And entitlement eventually meets reality. The lake went back to being quiet. Sunsets returned. Pine trees whispered again. But one thing had changed. The balance. Karen once patrolled the neighborhood like she owned it. Now she kept her curtains closed. Not because of shame, but because everyone had seen what happens when authority forgets its place. And every time I stand on that land, looking out over the water, I remember something important. You don't have to yell to win. You just have to know where you stand. Literally.